Talking with the experts.
In episode 402, Kate Hulsman explains why business owners need to know their options if they're having financial difficulties.
Just to explain where we came from, our founding partner, Hank de Jong, was actually running a really good business, and for no fault of his own, it was a tourism business, and 9/11 happened. So he basically sort of lost his business overnight. And he was trying to find an advisor that could tell him, how do I save part of my business? How do I save my family home? And he couldn't find someone to do that because a liquidator and bankruptcy trustee, they have the obligation to the creditors, not to the director or the individual. So anyway, the long story short is he came out the other side and said, I want to help other people that are in this position because things sometimes just go wrong and that people deserve a second chance. And they're the people that we work with day in, day out. The ones that...
Talking with the experts.
Talking with the experts would love to acknowledge Global Glamping Charities Incorporated for generously supporting this podcast. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all of its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And today, my guest is Kate Hulsman, and she's from de Jong Reed. And we're going to be discussing our options if anyone's having financial issues in their business. Now, Kate is passionate about helping company directors and individuals in financial distress find the best solution. And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there at the moment that would love Kate's services. With over 18 years' experience in all areas of business recovery and corporate insolvency, Kate has the knowledge and expertise which allows her to understand the issues that accountants and other business advisors often experience with their client files. She has strong communication skills and technical knowledge that ensures that she is the go-to person for a wide network of accountants. Kate will always make room in her busy schedule for one more coffee catch-up. Yay! I'll have to book one just for a coffee catch-up. Welcome, Kate. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Rose. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, wonderful. And right now, running a small business can be fraught with danger and full of mines. And, how can we get over all those financial pressures that most of us are feeling at the moment because of the way the economy is?
Yeah, it's a really interesting time, Rose, because I think a lot of people are feeling the pinch in different ways. For example, the ATO stopped collecting money through the pandemic, which was really great for small business to give them a breather, but they've got to start collecting now, and that's putting a bit of pressure on business owners to get back on top of that. We all know that prices of everything are increasing. So it is a really interesting time for small business owners. A lot of people just are really struggling to stay on top of just normal day-to-day kind of trading of a business. If it wasn't hard enough pre-pandemic, it's even harder now, I think. So yeah, it's going to be a really tough couple of years, I think, still to come for people.
Yeah, I think so. I think the economy's bordering on recession as it is. So I think if we hopefully don't hit the recession stage, but it's really leaning towards that at the moment. Everyone's just finding it, even personally with mortgages and cost of living in general, without having a business to run as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I mean, the mortgages is an interesting one because we've had interest rate rises, obviously. We don't need to talk about that, everyone knows. But I think also that hasn't quite caught up with some people. You know, a lot of them would still have been on maybe a locked-in rate, fixed rate. And when they come out of that in a year or something, that could have a really big pinch on people as well. So, and as you say, that on top of running a business, amongst other things, like really bizarre things that are happening, staffing issues. You know, every industry is really struggling to get skilled staff. I still can't work out where they've all gone, Rose.
Yeah, I think a lot of them just left the industry because it was so uncertain, especially the hospitality industry. You know, the hours weren't there, and when they weren't consistent. And I think people just decided, well, they'd had enough. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah,
I think a lot of those service industries they will be challenged to find staff in future because of the uncertainty that's still unfolding.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree.
So what can businesses do to, I guess, put a backstop in, a safety line, a safety net? What can they do if they are finding themselves in a challenging situation bordering on bankruptcy?
Yeah, so I think if I just go back a step, or put it into, maybe not back a step, but put it into context of, if we're sick ourselves, personally, we go and seek help. We go to the doctor, a specialist, whatever it might be. And I think a lot of business owners, when they do get into financial difficulty, are scared about asking for help. I think there's no shame in saying, hey, I need a hand. We ask for help to do our taxes, for example. So in terms of protecting, and no one wants to set up a business thinking it's going to fail. But there's a couple of things that are really important when you do start a business about protecting yourself. You want to keep your business separate from your personal affairs. So if something does go wrong, your family home's protected, and there's ways that can be done as well, so that you don't risk those assets that you've worked so hard to build up over the years. Simple things too, and I say simple things, but it's about having the knowledge, I suppose, but keeping an eye on, say, accounts receivable and making sure you're getting the money in that people owe you and they're not dragging their feet, because that might be a sign that, someone else is having an issue as well, or staying on top of the accounts payable too, but stretching terms if you need that, and making sure that you've got money set aside for superannuation and your taxes. And it's really about, I suppose, being organised and having those right advisors around you, an accountant, a bookkeeper, to make sure you're staying on top of that. But having said all of that too, Rose, sometimes things just happen, right? Sometimes, look, a pandemic's a big thing that's happened, obviously, in the last few years, but a simple example, a debtor that owes you, a significant amount of money, whether that's $20,000 in your business or $100,000 or $1 million, whatever the size of your business is, that can have a real impact if they don't pay you. So sometimes it's not the business owner's fault as such that something's gone wrong. So that comes back to what I was saying before. Don't be afraid to put your hand up and ask for help, because there are plenty of options on how to deal with these issues and how to move forward with your business, and make sure you are protected and that you can keep your family home. And I mean, we've all heard horror stories, probably, Rose, about people losing their family homes, they've gone bankrupt, whatever it might be, companies being liquidated and that sort of stuff. Now, part of our strategies involve those things, but if they're done in the right way, you can still move forward quite easily and maybe continue trading your business in a slightly different form, or at least protect your family home.
Yeah, it's really important. And I have been through the bankruptcy process. Some years ago, my husband and I had a retail food business, and the landlord wouldn't give us a lease and extend our lease. He was being quite difficult. And we couldn't sell the business because we didn't have a lease to sell.
Yeah, it's really, really tough, isn't it, when something like that happens and you can't And I'm sure, Rose, if you had have had, and I don't know who your advisors were at the time, but I hear a lot of stories after I've spoken to people that say, oh, I wish I had have known you, Kate. I wish I had have been able to reach out to you back then when this happened to me, because you would have gone in and sort of been on my side and found the right strategy for me, rather than just putting my hands up in the air and going, I have to liquidate my company or whatever it might have been.
Yeah, it was a really difficult process. And to become bankrupt, it's like you just lose everything. For 7 whole years, you are, absolutely just a nobody. And it's so devastating. It really is. It's devastating to your morale. It's devastating to everything. And, you can't get loans. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do other things. And for 7 whole years. And it was just really challenged our marriage as well, because
oh yeah, for sure, the emotional side of it. And just not to I don't want to sound like, well, I suppose I'm the expert in this area, but just to clarify, Rose, it is 3 years technically of bankruptcy if you tick all the right boxes.
We were told 7 at the time, because it was a fair while ago. So
yeah, so and there's different elements to that. The 7 years probably to do with your credit ratings and different things like that. But I think
to build a credit rating up was like, it's good now.
Forever.
But it just takes so long to build that up, because once you've been declared I think in our favour, we declared ourselves bankrupt.
Yes,
that goes in your favour a lot more. But even then, they are still there to help you. They're not going to just take your application and say, yeah, you're bankrupt. They will actually send you to an advisor who will well, this is what they did for us. They sent it to us to an advisor who steered us on the right track. And unfortunately for us, bankruptcy was the only way to go. However, they try not to make businesses go bankrupt. They try to find solutions for them. And thankfully, there's people like you out there that people can go to not have to go down that track and register for bankruptcy in the first place.
Yeah, and I think too, Rose, like bankruptcy, there's a lot of misconception about bankruptcy and how. And look, this is easy for me to say. I haven't personally been in that position, but there is a lot of misconception about bankruptcy in the sense of how bad it is. But I think importantly, the Bankruptcy Act the law was set up to make sure that people would go out there and have a go and have set up a business, and if something went wrong, they had a way to deal with it. So if you've got a company, it's liquidation. If you're an individual, it's bankruptcy, but essentially sort of the same process in a way at a high level, but it's about giving you that second chance to have another go at it. Now, like any law, there's people that use it to their advantage, but the honest business owner that has had something go wrong, it can be a really good option to move forward. Like if you can't pay your debts, you can't pay them. So, there's no judgment from what we do. Sometimes things just happen and you need someone to help you with that strategy, but also to hold your hand through the process. Yeah. And tell you it's going to be okay.
Yeah. That's and it's good to know that there are businesses like yours that can hold, someone's hand and steer them in the right direction, because your bankruptcy, really should be the last hurdle that you want to cross, because it's not a pleasant place to be. And I think it's moral. It's just, if it makes individuals feel icky, well, made me feel icky anyway. So.
Yeah. Look, you're not the first person that's ever said that to me. And I suppose just to explain where we came from, our founding partner, Hank de Jong, was actually running a really good business, and for no fault of his own, it was a tourism business, and 9/11 happened. So he basically sort of lost his business overnight. And he was trying to find an advisor that could tell him, how do I save part of my business? How do I save my family home? And he couldn't find someone to do that, because a liquidator and bankruptcy trustee, they have the obligation to the creditors, not to the director or the individual. So anyway, the long story short is he came out the other side and said, I want to help other people that are in this position, because things sometimes just go wrong. And that people deserve a second chance. And they're the people that we work with day in, day out, the ones that are having an honest crack at, business. And I mean, Australia is, I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but we have so many small businesses operating in Australia that we need to help people. If they've had a go at it and it doesn't go right, then let's not punish them for it. Let's give them a second chance and get them back on track.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to be. I think second chances are always, for the legitimate people, not for the ones that are, wrought the system, but for the legitimate people who are definitely down and out and could use a helping hand up.
Yeah, 100% agree, Rose. And we help people that really do need that help, not the ones that are repeat offenders that are doing it intentionally. People go back to the comment about hospitality and staffing, and that was a really tough time through the pandemic for hospitality, amongst other industries. But if we use that as an example, and some of them have needed help to get through that, and that might be, our services, finding them an option to give them that reboot and second chance to start trading again.
Yeah, and I think, I guess, what are some of the ways that people can be mindful of, we touched on, debtors and so forth and keeping up with your financials, but what other things can people be mindful of when they are running down the path of, losing their business?
Yeah, I think for business owners, sometimes they don't see it, but maybe for advisors as well, like checking in on those sorts of things. A lot of advisors, and I'm mainly talking about accountants, might only check in with their client, at the end of the year when they do their tax, or, but I suppose the other thing is keeping on top of those accounts payable and receivables, but also if the cost of living, let's call it the cost of living, everything's gone up, which means you've got to put your prices up too. I was reading something the other day on one of those Facebook hubs, in the local area I work and I live, and someone said, oh, that restaurant shut down. Oh, they were so cheap. It was like, can't remember what year they said, but like pre-pandemic prices or something like that, the comment was. And it's so true. I mean, everything's gone up. So for a business to survive, they've got to potentially recost, what they're doing as well. So don't be afraid to look at that. You're running a business. You've got to pay your bills. You've got to make the money. Yes, it's tough to put a price up, but, fuel's gone up. If you're in transport, you have to pass that cost on, don't you, unfortunately? So
absolutely.
I think that's a really big one. And obviously, the other thing is cash flow. I mean, cash is always king. If you don't have cash, we were talking in the office the other day about a client that had kept borrowing money to pay the tax office, but not enough, and then borrowed more because he got another legal letter and borrowed more and got so far into debt to pay off other debt. Like, that's just chasing your tail, right?
Absolutely. We did that. Yeah.
And I think, that's what I'm passionate about, Rose, is showing people that, or explaining to people that there are other options. You don't have to keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing, because sometimes that's just putting out the immediate fire, right? You get online, you borrow 50 grand off these people that you can just download basically money off the internet, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it can be really dangerous. So as a business owner, you're not expected to know all of this stuff and what to do when things go wrong. That's the importance, is that we, you know who to turn to. Again, it's like what I was saying about the GP or the specialist. If you've got something going wrong, you're going to go to emergency room, or you're going to go to your dentist if you've got to. So it's about knowing, those experts around you within business, and whether that's someone like myself when you're having financial issues, or, you need a new web designer or whatever it is. You're not a jack of all trades. If you're running a cafe, you don't know how to design a web page, if that makes sense. So, I think there's this stigma around something goes wrong, I don't want to tell anyone. And I think
that is an issue with a lot of us. We were the same. We didn't want to tell, and we just kept asking for extensions to pay, and, and they get tired of it. But whether it's lack of knowledge or just pride. We didn't go and ask for that help, and I think pride. You've got to swallow your pride and go and ask for that help from somebody who knows what they're doing and what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right there, Rose. Like, pride is a big thing, and business owners also have hope, right? You wouldn't start a business if you didn't have that passion and want to do it, and the hope and all of that sort of, an entrepreneur is not someone that just sits back in the corner and doesn't do something. So it's really hard then to put your hand up and say, and to use the word "I failed" or the sentence "I failed," which I don't think in most of the cases we, talk to people. It's not about failing. Probably every case, it's not about failing. It's about something that's happened. And, as I said, whether a debtor hasn't paid or the market's gone or whatever it might be, there is options there to move past that, and it's not necessarily anything that you've done wrong as a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. So what other hints and tips would you offer to our listeners if they find themselves in financial difficulties?
Yeah, so I keep saying the biggest one is whether it's us or someone else, just talk to someone about it. I think that's the biggest thing. But in a general accounting sense, it's about managing your day-to-day operations as well. So get a bookkeeper. A lot of business owners don't want to pay someone to do that. Get a bookkeeper or an accountant that can do that for you, so that you can then focus on growing the business, or working in the business and then growing it, if depending on what stage you're at. So I think having those experts around to help will stop, potentially something like a financial distress situation happening. Not always, but, obviously then you see the signs earlier. And yeah, seeking that advice, like whether it's the accountant, the IT person, the whoever, and admitting that if something does go wrong, you put your hand up and you can talk to someone and say, hey, I need a hand here.
Yeah, and my personal advice would be don't let it become a mountain, because it does really affect your mental health. All sorts of things like depression. I do know of people that have committed suicide because of, financial pressure was just too great. So seek that help early, as Kate said, because and swallow your pride. Don't be too proud to go and ask for help. I think that's really important, because your mental health, you haven't got your mental health, you've got, it's a real challenge to get back.
100% agree, Rose. It can be really, I mean, we've heard some, had some pretty horrific stories within our office, but over the years. But having said that, it's not every director, but there is that mental health aspect, and it can be really challenging. And you mentioned before, in your marriage or partnership, it whether it's your marriage, you're a partner, business partner, it can put real pressure, and it can become a really hostile sort of environment or negative environment. And when it comes down to it, again, I know it's easy for me to say, but it is money, and we can sort through it. Like, your health is so much more important, and we can find those options to sort through it. But I suppose the other thing too, Rose, that I would say is, if you're going to start a business, let's talk about a positive. If you're going to start a business, get some advice on how to structure that. So we again can help with sort of that end of it, the beginning of it, in terms of setting it up so that you're protected, so the asset protection kind of. And there's a couple of really quick, simple things. If you're a husband and wife partnership, or I should just say partners, and you're running a business, and say one's at home, one's running the business, make sure that the business, one person is the director of the company, and then one person owns the family home. That simple segregation of having someone with the risk and someone with the assets goes a long way. It's a really simple thing. A lot of people, again, pride probably comes into it, and I say particularly the wife, because usually they're the ones, raising children at home. I shouldn't say that because, times are changing. But if I use that as an example, the wife says, oh, but I want to be director of the company. I want to be part of this. That can be really detrimental if you've got, the family home. So really simple asset protection strategy is one person with the debt or the liability, and one person with the assets. So you're separating that. So it's a really good way to set it up. A lot of accountants are really good at doing that now. In the past, it probably wasn't quite done like that. And I say in the past, 10, 20 years ago. But now they are better at setting up structures for that sort of protection as well. Again, we offer that sort of stuff as well. So, but yeah, it's about protecting yourself from day one. I mean, we as business owners look at how we potentially, want to set up our business, grow it, sell it, it becomes our super, whatever it might be. But we don't look at exiting a business if something goes wrong. And we should be putting that sort of in place at the beginning as well, just to protect ourselves, because it is a risk that you're taking, right?
Absolutely. I agree. Get the structure right. Get someone professional to set it up for you, unless you yourself are an accountant or bookkeeper. We didn't do that. We thought we knew everything about everything, and ended up on the wrong side. So be very mindful to get the structures in place first, before you do anything, because it is so important. And you don't want to be playing catch up for the rest of the time that you're in business.
No, and the other thing about structures too, another comment I get a lot is, from accountants, when I'm talking to them, they say, oh, so-and-so didn't want to set up as a company. They're just trading as a sole trader, and they didn't want to set up a company because it would cost them $1,000 or $2,000 to get it all sorted. But the risk of trading as a sole trader is you don't have that extra level of protection of running a business through a company. It's you as Kate Hulsman trading that. So if something goes wrong, the only option you have is bankruptcy. Whereas if you've got a company, you've got that additional level of protection, I suppose, or there's a barrier between business and you personally. And a lot of people just don't want to spend the $2,000 or $1,000, whatever it might be, at the beginning, because they're like, oh, no, we'll be right. But for the sake of $2,000, that could save you a lot of hassle down the track. Yeah. So sometimes I think we have to invest a little to protect ourselves is the point I'm making.
Yeah, I agree totally. Yeah, I wish we had done that rather than be a partnership, because even being the partnership, there is a small level of protection, but it's not as much as if you are actually registered as a company.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it is about getting that right at the beginning and planning, I suppose, for the different ways you're going to exit business. Now, no one wants to think that they're going to exit by going into liquidation, but if we protect ourselves at the beginning, then there's a bit of peace of mind there too, that you're not going, if something does go wrong, your house is protected, or your other assets are protected, investment property, whatever it might be. Yeah,
I totally agree. Kate, where can people find you if they want to work with you or want to learn more?
Yeah, so we have the Dion Reid website, which has got heaps of information on it. So it's just djra.com.au, which has got lots of case studies and YouTube videos and all sorts of things on there. My details are also on the website. So it's probably the easiest way, or I am on LinkedIn as well. So just Kate Hulsman at LinkedIn. So yeah, any of those ways, I'm happy to, if people want to reach out, ask a question, be a resource, if they've got an issue, happy to just chat through it. One thing I will mention, Rose, is that we don't charge anything for our initial advice, written advice. So I always say to people, there's no harm in picking up the phone, having a chat, because there might be an option there that you never thought of before.
Absolutely. Kate, any last words of wisdom you'd like to share?
I'll go full circle back to what I said at the beginning. If you have that medical emergency, you're going to turn up an emergency room, treat us like the emergency room for your business. Happy to, help you out, fix up your business and move you forward. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and ask for help. I think that's the biggest thing. And I reckon the next couple of years are going to be tough for people. So really hope I can be there to help some people, as much as I don't want to sound like the downer.
Kate, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. I really appreciated the time that you've taken to help our other business owners out there that could be challenged, and I'm sure they would have found this information quite useful.
No worries. Thank you, Rose. Really appreciate chatting to you today.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.